She called me on a Sunday morning, exactly 1 year after our separation. I was sitting on my porch, watching the slow drift of autumn leaves down my driveway, when her name appeared on the screen. Monica. The sight of it made my chest tighten like it used to, but for very different reasons now. I let the phone ring twice before I answered. "Hi, Charles," she said, her voice calm, too calm. "I need to talk to you. I have an offer." An offer. That word hung in the air like a riddle I didn't want to solve. My ex-wife had once offered me her heart, her laughter, her companionship through the long winters of Michigan. A year ago, she offered me divorce papers instead. And now, an offer. I could have ignored her. I could have let it slide into voicemail and gone back to my coffee, back to pretending that peace was something I'd already made with the past. But curiosity is a dangerous comfort. It promises control when all it delivers is another wound. "I'm listening," I said, steadying my voice. She hesitated, then whispered, "Not over the phone. Can you meet me tomorrow? At the old diner on Maple? The same diner where she told me she was leaving me." I almost laughed at the symmetry of her cruelty. But instead, I said, "Tomorrow, 10 a.m. Then I hung up. I'm Charles Bennett, 58 years old, retired history teacher, widower once by death and once more by choice. Monica and I were married for 22 years before she decided she wanted to feel alive again. Those were her words, the kind of words people use when they've already found someone else. I learned later that someone else was a man named Derek, 37, smooth-talking, with the kind of confidence that comes from not having lived long enough to be humbled. He owned a small auto shop and liked to post pictures of himself shirtless, holding power tools. The irony didn't escape me. I'd spent years teaching about ancient civilizations and moral decay, and here I was, becoming a living exhibit. When she left, she took half the house, half the savings, and all of my peace. The silence she left behind was loud enough to echo, but over that year, I rebuilt small parts of myself. I started walking every morning. I joined a local church choir even though my voice was terrible. I reconnected with my son, Marcus, who'd always been closer to her. Life had begun, slowly, to make sense again, until that call. The next morning, the diner looked just as it did the last time I saw it. Greasy windows, checkered floor, and that same old waitress with her hair tied in a tight bun. The smell of coffee and burnt bacon hung in the air like nostalgia gone stale. Monica was already there, sitting in our old booth by the window. She looked good. That was the first wound of the morning. Time had been kind to her, or maybe she'd been kind to herself now that she was living the life she wanted. She smiled when she saw me, and I noticed the diamond bracelet I had given her on our 20th anniversary. So, she hadn't pawned everything. "Charles," she said softly, standing up as if we were still familiar. "Monica." We sat. The silence between us was thick but polite. She stirred her coffee twice before speaking. "You look well." "So do you," I lied. She took a deep breath. "I know this might sound strange, but I need your help. And before you say no, just hear me out." That's when I realized something was wrong. Not with her tone, but with her eyes. They darted around the diner like someone expecting a ghost to walk in. "What's this about?" I asked. She hesitated. "It's Derek." Of course it was. What about him? "He's in trouble. Serious trouble. And it's complicated." I leaned back, studying her face. Her confidence, the same one that used to both attract and infuriate me, was gone. What sat across from me was a woman cracked open by something she couldn't control. And what does that have to do with me? He borrowed money, a lot of it, from people who aren't exactly forgiving. She looked down, her fingers trembling. "I don't have anyone else to turn to." There it was. The offer. She wanted me to help her new man, the man she left me for. For a second I didn't speak. My mind replayed every night I spent staring at an empty side of the bed, every insult whispered through tears, every apology that came too late. "Monica," I said finally, "you do realize how insane that sounds. I know how it must sound, but you're the only person I trust to handle something like this discreetly." Discreetly, that word again, the same one she used the night she started hiding text messages. I stood up, ready to leave, but she reached across the table and grabbed my hand. "Charles, please. If not for him, then for me." That's when I saw it, her wedding ring. Not the one I gave her, a different one, a thinner band, silver, instead of gold. Cheap, temporary. Something inside me shifted, but I had a plan that no one, not even myself, could have predicted. I sat back down. "Tell me everything," I said. She did. For the next 30 minutes, she poured out a story that twisted tighter with every detail. Derek had borrowed $60,000 from a local loan shark to expand his auto shop. The deal went sour. Now, the lender wanted repayment, or collateral. Monica feared for her safety. "I can't go to the police," she whispered. "They said if I do, They'll come after me first. I just need the money to make this go away. Money you expect me to give you, not give. Lend. That word made me laugh. You don't get to use that word with me anymore. She flinched, but she didn't argue. Please, Charles, I'll find a way to pay you back. I swear. Her voice cracked. For the first time in years, I saw something real. Fear. Not manipulation, not guilt, but genuine fear. Against my better judgment, that old part of me that once loved her, the part I thought I'd buried, stirred awake. I'll think about it, I said, and walked out. Outside, the wind carried the smell of rain. I stood by my car, staring at the diner window, watching her silhouette shake as she cried into her hands. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But as I drove away, one thought began to take shape. She had come to me because she thought I was still the same man she could control. The quiet one, the forgiving one, the one who'd clean up after her chaos. She didn't know that year alone had changed me. I wasn't going to give her the money. I was going to give her something else entirely. Looking back now, that was the exact second when revenge started breathing inside me. I didn't sleep that night. I made tea at 2 a.m., walked circles around my living room, and listened to the radiator cough like an old blues singer in need of a sip of honey. My house has a way of talking to me in the dark, floorboards confessing, the fridge humming like a stubborn tenor. By sunrise, I had something that passed for a plan, or at least the bones of one. Revenge gets a bad reputation because people assume it's a fire. Sometimes, it's a mirror. You angle it just right, and the light does the work for you. I started with Derek's auto shop, Harbor and Maple Automotive. According to the Google listing Marcus helped me set up back when I was still trying to be the kind of father who knew how to bookmark things. It sat on a corner near a strip mall with a CVS, a payday loan place, and a Jamaican takeout joint that makes oxtails so tender they break your heart. Detroit suburbs carry a rhythm you feel even if you deny it. Church bells on Sundays, rumble of Dodge engines, gossip traveling faster than snowstorms. I chose an old navy blazer, pressed a white shirt, knotted a sober tie. People underestimate dignity. It's the quiet armor of men who have run out of patience for pretending. In the mirror, I saw the soft gray at my temples, my father's eyes, and the line above my lip that only appears when I'm remembering names I shouldn't say out loud. At 9:45 a.m., I pulled up to the shop. A neon sign blinked open like it was second-guessing itself. A young guy with ear gauges wrestled a lug nut into submission. The air smelled like rubber, coffee, and fresh lies. I stepped inside and rang the little bell on the counter. Derek appeared from the bay, wiping his hands with a rag. He had the same restless posture I remembered from the photos. Shoulders thrown back, jaw forward, always half ready to be admired. Up close, he looked more tired than 37. That's the thing about shortcuts. They age you like bad wine. "Welcome to Harbor and Maple," he said, then stopped when he recognized me. "Oh, Mr. Bennett. Charles is fine," I said. "I need an oil change and a tire rotation, and a conversation." His eyes flicked to the door, then back to me. "I've got a full schedule. I can wait." We stood in a silence heavy enough to bend metal. He cracked first. "Keys." I handed them over. "And while you're at it, Derek, tell me who you owe $60,000 to." He froze. The rag stalled against his fingers. "She told you. She asked me for help." He forced a smile. "Generous. You always were." "I used to be," I said. "Times change." He gestured toward a plastic chair that had seen better days, then led me into a small office where a poster of a bikini model smiled at a calendar from last year. I took the chair. He didn't sit. "It's a misunderstanding," he began. "Business loan. Expansion went sideways. Typical story. Typical stories don't come with threats that make a woman's hands shake in a diner," I said. "Who's the lender?" His jaw flexed. "A guy named Warren Price." I knew the name. Anyone who reads the local police blotter does. Warren Worry Price ran a network of bridge loans from the back of barber shops and poker nights. He grew up on the east side, made his money fast, and wore his generosity like a winter coat, warm on the outside, lined with razor blades. He bought Christmas toys for kids and sent men to the ER with their kneecaps rearranged. A philanthropist with a ledger. "How much do you owe him today?" I asked. 72, he said, eyes on the floor. "Interest." I let the number settle in the room. "And he wants it when?" "Friday." It was Tuesday. Monica had waited until panic had a knife at her spine. "What collateral did you give him?" I asked. Derek exhaled. "The shop, my truck, and the title to Monica's condo. She signed it over 3 months ago. Temporary," he said. My ribs tightened. I pictured Monica at a small desk, hand shaking over paperwork while trying to look decisive. I pictured Derek standing behind her, saying, "This is just for a few weeks. Babe, trust me." "You shouldn't have asked her to do that," I said. "I didn't have a choice." he snapped, too fast, then softer. I didn't want to lose everything. There it was. The part of him that wasn't a villain, just a boy who got good at arguing with the rules. Men like Derek don't wake up planning to be reckless. They step around one honest door and find themselves in a hallway of shortcuts. Let me talk to Warren, I said. He laughed. Sure, be my guest. He loves visitors with moral objections. I don't have a moral objection, I said, standing. I have a proposal. He squinted like I'd spoken in Sanskrit. What kind of proposal? The kind that clears your debt without costing me a dime, I said, but it'll cost you something else. He folded his arms. I'm not selling my soul. Not interested in it, I said. I want your honesty, for once, about everything. Every side job, every fake invoice, every part you resold after accidentally over-ordering, every hour you billed twice. I want names, dates, and if there's a ledger, I want it. The color evaporated from his face. What are you talking about? Don't insult me, I said quietly. You borrowed 60 grand because you plan to multiply it quick. That only works if you've already been walking close to the edge. I used to teach boys like you. They had hands for engines and minds for loopholes. He tried to hold my stare, lost. There's a beige filing cabinet in that corner, I said, pointing. Second drawer has a bar that sticks. You jammed it with a screwdriver once and chipped the paint. Your rag doesn't hide it. He didn't move for 3 seconds. Then he walked over, pulled the drawer, and took out a ledger. Old school. Columns, numbers, initials. It looked like something out of a Prohibition movie, except for the dates written in blue gel pen. Give me a copy, I said. Why? Because Warren respects leverage. I'm going to offer him a choice. His 72 from the wrong folks, or clean money from the right ones with a receipt, and a small community scandal if he insists on being theatrical. You think he cares about a scandal? Derek said. He cares about attention. Men like him like their charity drives. They don't want Channel 4 asking why they hold titles on women's condos next to their scholarship checks. Derek stared at the ledger like it might bite. I don't want trouble. You've already got it, I said. This is a chance to trade types. As I waited for him to copy the pages, a small bell jangled up front. A woman in a red coat argued about a tire sensor with the kid in gauges. Ordinary life kept going, indifferent to our trench. When Derek handed me the copies, he said, "What do you get out of this, Charles, besides the satisfaction of making me sweat? Call it interest on the year I spent on learning the sound of Monica's footsteps." He winced. She didn't mean to hurt you like that. People don't need intent to cause pain, I said. They need opportunity and a story they can live with. I left with a manila folder tucked under my arm and a small knot of disgust in my stomach. For him, for her, for me. The sky was the color of unpolished silver, the kind that used to sit in my mother's curio cabinet until a wedding demanded its shine. At the corner, I stopped at the Jamaican place. I ordered oxtail, rice and peas, and a ting. While I waited, I texted Monica. "Meet me at St. Luke's Church, 3 p.m., back entrance. Come alone." She replied 2 minutes later, "I'll be there." By noon, I was home, spreading copies of the ledger across my dining table like a broken map. The names on it were a mix of neighborhood faces, guys who worked nights at the plant, single moms paying cash for breaks, a deacon from a church I recognized. Most charges were legitimate, a few were shaded, parts listed twice, labor hours too generous, rush fees for people who didn't rush anything in their lives. There were also purchases that didn't match sales. Money had bled somewhere it shouldn't. I made calls, quiet ones. A former student of mine, Andre, now a city accountant with a low tolerance for theatrics, a cousin of a choir member who knew someone at Channel 4, not to expose anyone, yet, but to understand the terrain. Secrets hate geometry. They prefer fog. I was about to bring angles. Around 1 p.m., I brewed coffee and stood at the window, watching a neighbor's grandchild ride a bright green bike down the sidewalk, training wheels squealing. The sound took me back to Marcus at 8 Tiroa, his lanky legs pumping, his mouth open in a grin so wide it made me tear up every time. Shame's peculiar gift is how it dresses itself in nostalgia to keep you compliant. I shook it off. Before I left for St. Luke's, I wrote down a single sentence on an index card and slid it into my inner pocket. You do not owe anyone your silence. At 3 p.m., the back entrance to St. Luke's smelled like lemon cleaner and old hymns. The church was empty except for a volunteer vacuuming the nave with a reverence I admired. I chose the fellowship hall, round tables, a bulletin board full of flyers, and a cheap coffee urn like a relic of 1,000 awkward brunches. Monica arrived on time, coat pulled tight, eyes dark crescents. She looked like the ghost of a decision she no longer believed in. "What is this?" she asked, voice low. "Sanctuary," I said, "of a sort." "Sit." She sat, hands folded, gaze searching my face for mercy she hadn't paid for. "I went to see Derek," I said. "He told me about Warren Price. He also gave me something you should have known about before you signed your condo away." I laid a copy of the ledger on the table, turned to a page where her initials appeared next to temporary title hold, collateral. Her signature looked shaky. The dates around it told a different story. Money moving in circles, small lies keeping big ones company. I thought I was helping him, she said, eyes watering. He said it was just for a month. How many times did he say just? I asked gently. She swallowed. Too many. I leaned forward. I'm going to meet with Warren. I'll present him with a way to walk away clean. He'll accept, because men like him prefer checks to headlines. But when this is over, Monica, you and I are going to have a different kind of conversation. About what? She asked, defensive, kicking up like dust. About why you thought I would quietly fund the man you left me for, instead of helping you see him clearly. Her chin trembled. You're enjoying this. I'm trying to rescue the part of you that still knows how to be honest. She exhaled through her nose. You always were so composed. I used to hate that. I wasn't composed, I said. I was trying not to shatter in front of you. For a moment, we just listened to the vacuum out in the nave, its patient whine like a sermon about persistence. Outside, a siren passed, then quiet returned. Tonight, I said, standing, I'll call Warren. Tomorrow morning, I'll see him. Where? She asked, alarm flaring. You can't just... I'm not asking your permission, Monica. I'm informing you. We're done with secrets. She nodded, both grateful and offended, which is its own kind of honesty. At the door, she touched my sleeve. Charles, thank you. You'll thank me when you pay me back, I said. Not in money. In what then? In remembering who you are. Walking to my car, I felt a strange mix of clarity and sorrow. You don't spend 22 years with someone and emerge unmarked. Love is a tattoo that fades but never goes away. You can cover it with another design. The ink still remembers. Halfway home, I pulled into a small park and sat on a bench facing a pond glazed with thin ice. A mallard trudged across like a man late to his shift. Phone in hand, I typed a note for myself. Remember, the point isn't humiliation, it's truth. Truth has a way of making people look foolish on its own. This is where I'll pause to invite you, yes, you listening, to step into this with me. Where are you watching from? What city? What state? Drop it in the comments. And if this kind of story pulls a chair out for you, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next turn in this road. Your voice changes what happens here more than you think. I called Warren's number around 6 p.m. The man answered on the second ring. Price. Mr. Price, my name is Charles Bennett. I'd like to meet regarding a debt owed by Derek Mason. A beat. Who are you to him? A concerned party who prefers checks to dramatics. He laughed once, wanted a dry click. I respect efficiency. Tomorrow at 9, Beaufort Barber on Jefferson. Back room. Don't be late. He hung up. Men like Warren keep conversations short so the threat has room to breathe. That night I made copies of the copies. I slipped one set into a plain envelope labeled W.P. with a Sharpie. In another envelope, I placed a typed summary of inconsistencies from the ledger, just facts, no adjectives, along with a draft email to a local reporter whose work I admired. I didn't intend to send it. I just liked knowing I could. Around midnight, I opened a shoebox I hadn't touched since the separation. Inside lay a watch my father gave me the day I got my first real job. Sturdy, simple, almost severe. He'd said, "Time is the only currency you never get back, son. Spend it like it's watching you." I wound it, listened to its quiet tick return like a heartbeat you didn't realize you missed. In the morning, I put on a charcoal suit and a black turtleneck. I know, very 1970s professor. It made me feel like the hero of an old Sidney Poitier film, the kind where dignity does more damage than fists. I slid the envelopes into a leather folio and tucked the index card beside them. Beaufort Barber was one of those places where elders gather for arguments more serious than politics. The correct fade for a boy's first cut, the top 5 gospel choirs in the Tri-County area, whether the Lions will ever stop breaking hearts. When I stepped in, the smell of talc and clipper oil wrapped around me like a memory. A man in a burgundy cape nodded toward the back with his chin. "He's expecting you." The back room was smaller than I imagined. 2 chairs, a small table, a framed photo of Warren shaking hands with a councilman at a charity event. Warren sat with one ankle resting on his knee, reading a newspaper like it still mattered. He looked up, handsome in the way money makes a face seem decisive. "Mr. Bennett," he said. "Sit." I sat. I placed the folio on the table and kept my hands visible. He glanced at my watch with professional curiosity. "It's a tell among men who trade in respect. You here to plead for your boy?" he asked. "He's not my boy," I said. "I'm here because you have a choice to make." "I like choices," he said. "They make people show themselves." "Then let me show you something." I slid the first envelope across the table. He opened it, glanced at the ledger pages, then at the typed summary. "Your boy's been creative," he said. Creative is one word, I said. Sloppy is another. He smirked. You threatening to take this to the news? I'm not threatening anything, I said evenly. I'm proposing a transaction. You release the title to Monica's condo. You accept a structured repayment plan for Derek's principal based on verifiable shop revenue, and in return this stays between the three of us. The interest goes. Call it a fee you already collected in goodwill from your last charity gala. His smile thinned. You think I care about Channel 4? I think you care about donors, I said. About mothers who let their kids sit on Santa's lap at your toy drive without wondering if the man in the suit has liens on women's homes. You built a brand called Benevolence. This would stain it. He tapped the papers with 2 fingers. You went to trouble. I'm a retired teacher, I said. All we do is go to trouble. He leaned back. His eyes were calculating in a way that didn't feel cruel, just professional. Why do you care about the woman? She's my ex-wife, I said. He blinked, then laughed. A real one. Now this is theater. It used to be, I said. Now it's maintenance. He drummed the table. Outside, the buzz of clippers rose and fell like distant bees. He placed the papers back in the envelope, slid it toward me. 2 conditions, he said. 1, I keep collateral on the truck until half the principal is paid. 2, Derek signs a confession of judgment. He misses a payment. I file. No drama. Just paper. Reasonable devils are more dangerous than unreasonable saints. They'll hand you a contract and call it mercy. I agree to the first, I said. The second is excessive. You'll get a weekly payment schedule with automatic transfers. You'll get a copy of the shop's monthly books reviewed by a neutral accountant. Missed payments trigger a meeting, not a hammer. He fails twice. You file. Not before. He considered, then nodded. You're good. I'm bored, I said. There's a difference. We shook on it. His grip was dry and firm, like a pastor who's practiced shaking hands with grief. He stood, then paused at the door. You know he'll mess up again, he said. Men like him don't learn from deals. They learn from damage. I'm counting on it, I said, but the lesson won't be yours to teach. As I left, the barber in the burgundy cape said, You look like you just sold a poem to a man who can't read. Close enough, I said, and we both smiled. In the car, I exhaled so deeply I startled myself. Relief came mixed with a taste of metal. Power, even borrowed, has a way of corroding. Halfway down Jefferson, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Bennett? A voice said, low and rough. Yes, this is the part where you stop playing savior, the man said. You keep poking your nose in and your ex-wife won't have a door to come home to. Who is this? I asked, keeping my voice even. Silence. Then the line went dead. I pulled into a Rite Aid parking lot, sat there with the engine off, and watched a woman load cat litter into her trunk. The world was still tediously ordinary, which is how you know trouble is real. Life doesn't pause to let it perform. I almost called Monica. Almost. Instead, I called Andre, my accountant former student. 2 things, I said. I need you to be the neutral reviewer for a small shop's monthly books, and I need you to run a name, Warren Price, through every public nonprofit and contractor database you can legally look at. Legally, huh? Andre chuckled. You all right, Mr. B? I will be, I said. I think. He promised to get back to me by evening. I put the car in drive, then stopped. That's when I decided to do something they would never forgive me for. I turned the car around and headed not to my house, not to Monica's, but back to Harbor and Maple. I parked out front, walked in past the bell, and found Derek in the bay, hunched over a Mazda like it owed him an apology. We have an agreement, I said, handing him the terms I'd typed up on my old laptop. Read it, sign it. We start payments Friday. He scanned, lips moving like the words were seeds he had to chew. You got him to drop the interest? Consider it paid in dignity, I said, and be grateful. He nodded, then lifted the pen. I put a hand on the paper. One more condition, I said. You tell Monica the truth, all of it. Every part you resold, every shortcut you took. You tell her before I do. He stared at me, pen hovering. Why? Because she needs to hear your voice when it fails to lie. He signed. His name looked like it wanted to run away from itself. As I turned to go, the shop door swung open. A tall man in a leather jacket stepped in, winter air pushing him like a messenger. He looked at me, then at Derek, then at the paperwork in my hand. You must be the teacher, he said, the word shaped like a threat and a joke at once. I didn't answer. He smiled without humor. Warren sends his regards, he said, and a message. Some debts don't live on paper. He closed the door behind him and slid the lock with a click that sounded too final. The metallic snap of that lock was sharp enough to slice through the hum of the shop. Derek's eyes widened first. Mine didn't. Fear only wastes oxygen when you let it. The man in the leather jacket stepped closer, his boots leaving prints in the oil-stained floor. He was broad in the shoulders, the kind of broad that comes from lifting consequence for a living. His face was calm, almost polite. That made him worse. "You're Warren's friend?" I asked, my tone so casual it nearly surprised me. He shrugged. "Friend is generous. I handle misunderstandings." "Ah," I said, "so you're an interpreter." He smirked at that. "Something like that. He says you're interfering with his business." I glanced at Derek, who was visibly shaking. "I'm helping you both," I said. "That ledger keeps Warren out of the papers, and Derek out of the morgue." Leatherjacket tilted his head, studying me like a man inspecting a vintage car, curious if it still got an engine under all that polish. "You sound smart," he said. "You think smart fixes stupid. It educates it," I said. "On good days." The line almost made him laugh. Almost. He took another step forward. "Mr. Bennett, I don't like hurting old folks, but my boss, he doesn't like surprises. So, how about you hand over those papers and forget you ever met Derek Mason?" I smiled faintly. "Do you believe Warren will thank you for scaring a retired teacher inside a public business at noon on a weekday? Cameras, witnesses." He cut me off with a grin. "No cameras. Your boy Derek unplugged them last night, isn't that right?" Derek flinched. He said it was just for repairs." Leatherjacket turned his glare on him. "Repairs? Sure. The kind that make your insurance company cry." He moved fast, grabbing Derek by the collar, slamming him into the side of a car door hard enough to leave a dent. The sound echoed through the shop like a gavel. "Stop," I said, my voice low but steady. "He's made his mistakes, but you touch him again, and you'll regret it." He turned his head slowly toward me. "You threatening me, Professor?" "No," I said. "I'm reminding you that stupidity is contagious. You're standing too close." He laughed, but something flickered in his eyes. Curiosity again. "You got guts," he said. "I'll give you that." I took a careful step forward, pulling my phone from my jacket pocket. "Let me show you something." I turned the screen toward him. It was recording. "See that light?" I said. "That's live streaming to a private cloud account. Automatic upload. You hit me, and this goes to 3 inboxes. One of them belongs to a reporter named Carla Ruiz who's been trying to prove Warren's connection to illegal lending for months. She's hungry. You feed her. She bites." He stared at the phone, then back at me. "You bluffing? Try me," I said, pressing the screen. He held my gaze for 3 long seconds. Then he let Derek go. "Warren said you were clean," he muttered. "Didn't say you were slick." He headed for the door, then paused with his hand on the lock. "You tell your ex-wife to count her blessings, but if this video shows up anywhere, Mr. Bennett, you'll wish you'd stayed divorced from the world. Not just her." He left. The door slammed behind him. For a long minute, the only sound was the metallic rattle of Derek's breath. "You recorded that?" he asked, his voice trembling. "Yes," I said. "And no, the phone was off, but he didn't know that." "You're insane," he whispered. "No," I said. "I'm tired." I walked toward the door, unlocked it, and stepped out into the cold. The sky was gray and low, like a thought you can't shake. As I stood there breathing in the sharp air, I realized something strange. I wasn't scared. I was calm in the way storms are calm right before they move inland. I drove to the riverfront, parked, and watched the water shift like a restless thought. Detroit's river always looks like it's hiding something under the surface. Industry, memory, sins. I took out my father's watch and wound it again, listening to that steady tick. Revenge was no longer a plan. It was a rhythm. At home, I poured a glass of bourbon. I hadn't touched the stuff since the divorce, but tonight it seemed honest. The burn in my throat felt cleaner than pity. I called Marcus, my son, just to hear a voice I trusted. "Dad, everything all right?" he asked. "Better than it's been in a while," I said. "You busy this weekend?" He laughed. "You planning something?" "Just dinner. Sunday, I'll cook." "You mean order takeout?" he said. "Semantics," I replied. "Bring that woman of yours. I'd like to meet her properly." He promised he would. I didn't mention Monica. Some truths wait for better lighting. I slept deeply that night. No dreams, just silence. But morning brought a new visitor. At 7:30 a.m., a knock on the door. 2 officers in uniform. The younger one looked barely old enough to shave. The older one carried the weary politeness of someone who's seen too many sad mornings. "Mr. Bennett," the senior officer asked, "we need to ask you a few questions about an incident at Harbor and Maple Automotive last night." My stomach dropped. "What happened?" the young one said. "We found Derek Mason unconscious in his shop around 1 a.m. Broken glass. Signs of struggle. He's in the hospital. Stable but sedated." "Who found him?" "Anonymous call," the officer said. "Came from a blocked number." I stepped aside. "Come in." They didn't stay long. Routine questions, polite smiles. I told them I'd seen Derek alive around 5 p.m., that he was fine then, that we'd discussed his financial trouble. I left out Warren and the leather jacket. The younger officer wrote quickly, nodding like he believed every word. The older one looked at me longer. "If you think of anything," he said, handing me a card, "call us." When they left, I sat on the couch, fingers steepled. mind-turning. Whoever had attacked Derek hadn't done it to rob him. It was a message, probably from the same man who'd handled misunderstandings. The warning had escalated. I considered calling Monica, but something told me she already knew. People like her have a radar for consequence. They feel it before the phone rings. Still, I dialed. She answered on the first ring. "Charles, you've heard?" "Yes, I'm on my way to the hospital." "Don't," I said. "Let me go first." "Why?" "Because I'm the only one Warren won't shoot on sight." She started to cry softly. "Charles, please don't." "I'll call you," I said, and hung up. An hour later, I was in the hospital's sterile hallway, the smell of disinfectant like old guilt. Derek lay in a narrow bed, bruises on his cheek, a small cut above his eye. A nurse adjusted his IV and gave me that look reserved for relatives, half pity, half impatience. "He'll wake soon," she said. "You can sit, but keep it short." I sat. For 10 minutes, I watched the slow rise and fall of his chest. When his eyes finally opened, confusion flickered before recognition did. "Charles," he croaked. "They came back." "I figured," I said. "They wanted the papers," he whispered. "I told them you had them." "I'm sorry." "You told them what?" "I didn't mean to." I stood, fighting the urge to shout, "You really are an artist of disaster." He tried to grab my wrist, but the IV line held him down. He said, "Warren said it's not about the money anymore. He said she owes him something personal." I froze. "She? Monica," he rasped. He said she was involved in one of his early deals, something about falsifying documents years ago. Said she owed him protection. For a moment, the air thinned. "She never mentioned that." He smiled weakly. "Of course she didn't. She's good at leaving that part out." I left without a word. In the hallway, I leaned against the wall, feeling the weight of 22 years pressing on my chest. The past wasn't a wound, it was a debt. By the time I reached my car, I had stopped shaking. There was clarity now, cruel, crystalline clarity. Monica hadn't just been a victim in Warren's world. She'd been an accomplice once, and maybe he never forgot. If that was true, then I wasn't rescuing her. I was stepping into a trap she'd built years ago, but I wasn't walking out empty-handed. I drove straight to Monica's condo. She opened the door before I even knocked, her face pale, eyes swollen. "Charles, thank God." I held up a hand. "Save it. Tell me about Warren." Her mouth fell open. "What? Don't pretend. I know you worked with him before Derek ever came along." She sank into a chair, silent for a long time. Finally, it was a long time ago. I was desperate. After Marcus's tuition, after the house repairs, you were teaching, and I couldn't tell you I'd borrowed from him. I thought I could fix it quietly. "How much?" "20,000, she whispered. "I paid most of it back, but he kept a copy of the papers. Said I'd owe him a favor one day, and that favor was helping Derek." Tears rolled down her cheeks. "He said if I didn't, he'd expose me. I was stupid, Charles. I thought I could end it." "You could have told me," I said softly. "I couldn't bear you looking at me like you are right now." I wanted to shout, to rage, to break something solid enough to deserve the sound, but I didn't. I just nodded slowly. "Then I suppose we're both fools," I said. "You for thinking lies save you, and me for thinking silence does." She reached for my hand, but I stepped back. "You still have that bracelet I gave you?" I asked. She blinked. "Yes." "Good. Keep it close. It's going to buy you your freedom." "What do you mean?" "You'll see." As I left, she called after me. "Charles, please, don't do anything reckless." I didn't answer, because reckless is just another word for too late. That night, I sat at my dining table again. The papers spread like a storm map. The ledger, the contract, the emails, the contact card from the detective. They formed a constellation. I saw it now. The pattern wasn't chaos, it was strategy. Warren didn't threaten people. He collected them. He turned debt into leverage. Leverage into silence. I poured another drink, looked at the watch, and whispered to the empty room. "You like leverage, Warren. Let's see how it feels to have the floor pulled from under you." I opened my laptop, pulled up the reporter's email draft I'd written days earlier, and began to attach files, every document, every thread, every connection. Before pressing send, I added one line at the top. "This is not revenge. This is math." I hit send. Looking back now, that was the moment I stopped being her ex-husband and became my own witness. The email was gone. No confirmation, no applause, just the soft click of inevitability. That's how truth travels. Silent, uninvited, efficient. I shut the laptop, sat back, and listened to the house hum. It felt lighter, like the walls had exhaled something they'd been holding too long. By morning, the news had already begun to drip through the city. a whisper on local radio, a short post on a community Facebook group, then an early segment on Channel 4, local businessman Warren Price under investigation for predatory lending. No names yet, no charges, just smoke, the kind that tells you fire has found its oxygen. I stood in the kitchen, brewing coffee, watching the anchor's mouth move. Behind her, Warren's smiling photo appeared, the one from his charity gala, where he wore the same black suit I'd seen hanging behind him at the barbershop. Funny how people dress for both generosity and guilt the same way. My phone buzzed. Unknown number again. You really went and did it, Warren's voice said. Calm, precise, too calm. I did what decent men do when you corner them, I said. You think decency protects you? No, I said, but exposure does. You won't touch me now. Not with the whole city watching. A long pause. Then, you ever hear what happens to teachers who think they're smarter than the lesson? The line went dead. I didn't call the police. I knew better. Men like Warren didn't make threats, they made plans. By noon, Marcus called. Dad, you on the news. I'm part of it, I said. Don't worry, it's under control. He sighed. You sound calm. That's how I know it's not. He wasn't wrong. Calm isn't peace, it's posture. That afternoon, I visited Derek at the hospital again. His arm was in a sling now, his eyes dull from painkillers. They came back, I asked. He shook his head. No one's been here. But cops asked about Warren. I told them nothing. Good, I said. Let them find their own proof. He swallowed hard. You sent that stuff to the press, didn't you? I didn't answer. He groaned. You just made yourself a target. Maybe, I said. But I've also made myself a headline, and headlines are harder to bury. I left before he could argue. Outside, the winter air carried that metallic bite before snow. My breath hung in front of me like smoke from a confession. By evening, the story grew legs. Channel 4 had new footage. Police entering Warren's office, boxes carried out, officers not smiling. The reporter, Carla Ruiz, stood outside the building, her breath fogging the mic. Sources say evidence of forged titles and falsified loan agreements has surfaced, she said. Among the victims, several small business owners, including a woman identified only as M.B., whose property was allegedly used as collateral without consent. M.B. Monica Bennett. I sat back. My throat tightened. The truth had found her name faster than I'd expected. My phone rang again. This time, it was Monica. I almost didn't answer. Almost. Charles, she said, voice trembling. They just said my name on television. I know. They're going to think I was part of it. You were part of it. I was desperate. So was everyone he trapped, I said. The difference is, I told the truth before someone else told it for me. Do you even care what happens to me? She snapped. I paused. More than you think. Less than I used to. She sobbed softly. He's going to come after me. No, I said. He's too busy saving himself. But I wasn't sure I believed that. That night, I stayed awake again. Every creak in the house felt like a warning. Every car passing outside sounded like a possibility. By 2 a.m., I'd moved my father's old revolver from the drawer to the table. I hadn't fired it in 30 years, but it still felt heavy with memory. At 4:15, someone knocked. 3 short raps, calm, intentional. I picked up the revolver, walked to the door and looked through the peephole. Monica. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. I opened the door, still holding the gun loosely by my side. What are you doing here? He called me, she said. Warren. He said if I don't meet him tonight, he'll release everything. Emails, contracts, everything. He's bluffing, I said. He's not. He sent me a photo of the documents. He said he wants to meet at the riverfront. Midnight. I exhaled slowly. Then we go together. She shook her head. No. If he sees you alone, you won't come back. Her eyes met mine, full of fear and something else. Shame, maybe, or gratitude she couldn't name. Get your coat, I said. We're ending this. The night was cold enough to crack glass. The river shimmered under streetlights, dark and endless. Warren stood by a bench, hands in his pockets, coat collar turned up. He looked like a man posing for his own obituary. You brought company, he said as we approached. I brought a witness, I said. He smiled. You think you're the hero of this little film, Charles? I think I'm the ending. He pulled a folder from his coat. Inside here is everything your ex-wife signed, every slip-up she made. If this goes to the police, she won't see sunlight for a decade. Monica's voice cracked. You said you'd destroy them. I said I'd keep them safe, he said. And I did. I stepped forward. You've lost your network. Your accounts are frozen. The only leverage you have left is that folder, and I'm offering you something better. He raised an eyebrow. Money? No, I said. Survival. He laughed. You threatening me, teacher? No, I said. I'm giving you a way out. Hand me those papers, and in the morning I'll make sure the press hears about your cooperation with the investigation. They'll call you a whistleblower instead of a criminal. You might even keep your charity. He studied me for a long time, his breath fogging in short bursts. Then he said, You're lying. Try me. I said, but choose fast. I sent your location to a reporter 10 minutes ago. She'll be here in 15. You can either hand over those papers to me or explain to her why you're meeting your former client at midnight by the river. He stared, jaw working. Then, slowly, he extended the folder. Monica reached for it, but I took it first. We're done, I said. He smirked. You think this ends clean? You think people like me disappear? I stepped closer. No, but you'll fade. Men like you always do. You feed on fear, and I just cut off your supply. He laughed once, a short, bitter sound. Careful, Charles. You're starting to sound like me. Then he turned and walked away, his shadow stretching thin across the snow. Monica collapsed onto the bench, shaking. I handed her the folder. Take it, burn it, bury it, but don't ever let someone else hold your story again. She looked up, eyes wet. Why did you do all this for me? I thought about it. Because dignity doesn't die just because love does. We drove back in silence. Halfway to her condo, she said, do you ever think you'll forgive me? I kept my eyes on the road. Forgiveness isn't the point anymore. Survival is. When I dropped her off, she hesitated at the door. Goodbye, Charles. Good night, I said. I drove home under the pale blue light of morning. Birds were beginning to stir, their songs too bright for what I felt. Inside, I poured one last drink, set my revolver on the table, and stared at it. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel angry, just empty in a way that felt clean, like a wound after it's finally stopped bleeding. But peace, like revenge, has an echo. At 9 a.m., the police knocked again. Same officers. Mr. Bennett, the older one said, we have a few more questions. There's been an incident. I steadied my voice. What kind of incident? Warren Price was found dead early this morning. Gunshot wound. Riverfront. The words landed softly but carried weight. They looked at me carefully. You were seen with him last night. Yes, I said. He gave us evidence. He was alive when we left. They exchanged a glance. We'll need you to come down to the station. As they led me out, I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror. I didn't look guilty. I looked finished. The river was still running somewhere behind my eyes, dark and patient. And for the first time, I wondered, had Warren been right? Did truth ever stay clean once you touched it? I almost stopped there. Almost. But what I did instead shocked even me. They sat me in a room the color of dental anxiety, pale, too clean, and humming with fluorescent light that made everyone look suspicious. The older detective, Dorsey, his badge red, took the chair across from me. The younger one leaned against the wall like he'd practiced appearing casual in a mirror. Mr. Bennett, Dorsey said, folding his hands, tell us again about your meeting with Warren Price. I told them, stripped of adjectives, time, place, why we were there, the folder, his walkaway, Monica's panic like static in the air. I left out the part where I promised a reporter his location, not because I was scared, but because it wasn't theirs to hold yet. The younger officer scratched something in his notebook. Why would he give you those papers? Because he liked the idea of surviving more than the fantasy of winning. Dorsey's eyes were kind in that careful way people reserve for dogs that might bite. And then you went straight home? Yes. Anyone who can confirm? My neighbor saw me come in. My son called me at 10:30. Phone records will show. He nodded. We have traffic cam footage of your car leaving the riverfront at 12:07 a.m. We also have footage of Warren walking north at 12:10. He's alone. There's a 10-minute blind spot, and then the cameras catch a black SUV idling near the pier. It leaves at 12:28. License plate, obscured, he said, conveniently. The young one looked up. You ever see a tall guy in a leather jacket around him? My throat didn't tighten. Once, at Derek's shop. Name? Didn't give it. Dorsey slid a photo across the table. Leather jacket stared up at me, printed in that cop printer gray. We're looking for this man. Goes by Reed. Sometimes Reedus. Works for whoever pays him, and some people who don't. Then I suggest you look where men like him feel invisible. I said. Barbershops, back rooms, places where the music is loud and the favors are quiet. He didn't smile, but something in his eyes conceded the point. We'll be in touch, he said. Don't leave town. I'm 58, and I make grocery lists on paper, I said. I'm not vanishing. When I stepped out of the station, the sky had the heavy look of snow considering its options. Carla Ruiz, the reporter, waited by the curb, scarf up to her nose, eyes bright with caffeine and intent. Mr. Bennett, she said, stepping into my path. You sent me the initial packet. I connected it to a state grant Warren helped funnel to a non-profit that never delivered its promised job training. The treasurer's signature is missing, but the check's cleared through a shell company. Guess who sits on the board? The same councilman in that photo in his barbershop back room. Her breath fogged between us. I need a quote. Try this, I said. Debt is a leash. Some men learn to hold it. Others pretend it's a tie. She smiled. Poetic, but legally useless. Did Warren give you anything last night? He did, I said, and now he's dead. She lowered her voice. There's more than predatory loans here. I think he was about to flip, or somebody decided he would and didn't like the idea. If you know anything that points to who wanted him quiet, do your job, Miss Ruiz, I said gently. Follow the money, not the sermon. She pressed her card into my hand, then hesitated. Be careful. The smart ones always forget their bodies can be broken. I went home by way of Eastern Market, picked up a bag of Honeycrisp apples and a rotisserie chicken from the little corner grocer where the owner still writes your total on a paper sack if the register freezes. Ordinary errands are how decent men remind themselves they exist. The house felt colder than it should. I turned up the heat and made coffee that tasted like consequence. My phone vibrated. Andre, I got something, he said without hello. Remember those city contract databases you asked me to check? Warren's charity subcontracted maintenance to a company called Jackson Facility Services. No website, no listed employees, just a P.O. box and a phone number that forwards to a prepaid. A shell, I said. Yeah, but here's the thing. The person paying property taxes on the P.O. box unit is 1S. Reed, your leather jacket friend might have a side hustle. I sat down. That means Reed wasn't just muscle. He was part of the money, or he was collecting his cut, Andre said, which means if Warren was going to talk, Reed became expendable or dangerous. Either way, you see the line. I do, I said. Can you email me everything? Every scrap that connects that shell to the charity and the councilman? It's on your way. And Mr. B, watch your back. You know I fuss. I know, I said. Keep fussing. The emails landed like small metal squares in my inbox. Receipts, property records, all the polite lies bureaucracy tells on itself. I printed them. Paper makes truth heavier. It was past noon when Monica called. Her voice was wrecked. They called me to the station, she said. They asked about you, about whether you had a gun. I do. They know. They asked where I was after I left you, she whispered. Where were you? I drove around until the sun came up. I believed her and didn't. A contradiction marriage teaches you to live with. Tell the truth, I said. All of it. You don't get to tell me that anymore, she snapped and hung up. Less than an hour later, someone knocked again. Not police this time. Reed. No leather jacket. He wore a black wool coat, and the wind had put color in his cheeks. He looked almost respectable, the way a wolf might look in a church. You're brave, he said through the screen door. Or stupid. I'm home, I said. That's all. He glanced past me, as if measuring the room. Warren's dead. You finally feel big. I feel tired, I said, and I feel sorry for whatever part of you thought this was a career. He smiled without warmth. He planned to take a deal, thought he could sell me as a bonus, thought he could sell everybody. So you killed him, I said. The quiet in my voice surprised even me. You think I'd say that to a man who drinks his coffee next to a landline? He said. I'm here to make you a promise. You stop feeding that reporter, you stop playing clever, or the next person found near a river gets your last name. I stepped closer to the screen. Do you want to hear a story? He blinked, irritated. What? A history story, I said. There's a Roman general, Cincinnatus, called from his farm to save the city, did the job, then gave the power back and went home to his plow. Men who understand enough to walk away are harder to own than men who crave applause. He squinted. You think that's you? I think that's the version of you that didn't show up, I said. You could walk away, right now, before the councilman who used you decides to cut that P.O. box loose with your name still on it. He didn't flinch, but a calculation shivered across his face. I like you, he said, almost tender. You make threats sound like courtesy, then accept mine in the spirit intended, I said. The reporter doesn't need me anymore, and the police will have that shell company in a day. Pick a direction and keep walking. He tapped the frame of the door with one knuckle. You ever get tired of the sound of yourself? Every day, I said. That's why I try to say useful things. He left without another word, boots crunching on old ice. I locked the door and stood there, my father's watch ticking like a metronome for a rehearsal I hadn't agreed to. That's when I realized I wasn't waiting on the police, or the press, or Reed's conscience. I was waiting on the part of me that always chose quiet. He'd had his run. He'd kept me safe and small and polite. It was time to retire him. I almost stopped there. Almost. But what I did instead shocked even me. I called Carla. Ready to move? I asked. Always, she said. I'm giving you a name. S. Reed. Tie it to Jackson Facility Services. Tie that to the charity's maintenance contracts. Follow that to the councilman's campaign contributions. You'll find a loop. It's ugly. It pretends to be benevolent. You sure you want me to print that without your name on it? She asked. Print the documents, I said. Leave me out of the byline. I've already had my curtain call. She was quiet a beat. All right, but, Charles, this puts Reed in a corner. Cornered men don't send flowers. I know, I said. I'm counting on something else. After we hung up, I drove to St. Luke's. Not for prayer, I've never been good at talking to ceilings, but because the sanctuary smells like answers, lemon cleaner and wax and the starch of old cloth. The pastor, a woman with kind hands and a spine like a steel rod, saw me step in. She didn't ask questions. She handed me a cup of coffee as if I'd just finished singing a solo. I need to use your phone, I said. Line in my office, she said. I called Dorsey on the quiet landline and left a message I knew would move him. Detective, you're looking for a black SUV linked to the riverfront. Start with city maintenance vendors. There's a shell called Jackson Facility Services. Find the vehicle registered to Amos Reed. Check the gas purchases logged on the company card last night near Jefferson. He was paid to be there. I hung up and wrote 4 words on the church's donation envelope and slipped it into the collection box. It's all connected. The note wasn't for God. It was for me. By the time I reached my car, snow had started. A simple, earnest snow that made the city softer. I drove slow, thinking of how Midwestern streets get quiet in weather like this, how people carry strangers' groceries to trunks without being asked, how kindness sometimes looks like irritation that you forgot your gloves. My phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Dinner still on Sunday. She's excited to meet you. Yes, I typed. I'm making chicken. I paused. Then, bring an appetite for honesty. He sent a thumbs up and a heart. The screen blurred for a second. I wiped my eyes and blamed the snow. Near dusk, Dorsey called back. You gave me a hell of a breadcrumb trail, he said. We found the SUV, abandoned behind a warehouse. Camera picked it up coming from Jefferson at 12:23 a.m. The shell company connects to Reed. We're looking for him. Be careful, I said. He's professional in the way fire is professional. We'll be careful, he said. One more thing, the folder you said Warren gave you, we'll need it. It's with my ex-wife, I said. She's deciding what to burn and what to frame. We'd prefer none of it gets burned, he said dryly. I'll talk to her, I said. I called Monica. She didn't answer, then did on the second try. Her voice sounded like she'd swallowed gravel. What now? Police want the folder. They'll see everything, she said, panicked. The old loan, the signatures. They'll also see the coercion, I said, and the pattern. You cooperate. You walk out a witness, not a suspect. Silence. Then, I don't know how to be that brave. You don't have to be brave, I said. Just be done. She exhaled a shaky laugh that wasn't a laugh. Come get it. I pulled into her lot under a sky turning the blue of old bruises. The hallway carpet smelled like Lysol and arguments. She opened the door before I knocked and thrust the folder into my hands like it was hot. You look tired, I said. I look like myself, she replied, and for the first time in months, the honesty fit her face. On impulse, I said, the bracelet, give it to me. Her hand went to her wrist. Why? Because it's the last promise we made to each other that we didn't keep, I said. Let's start fresh with nothing owed. She blinked, then unclasped it. When the cool weight slid into my palm, something uncoiled in my chest I hadn't realized was wound tight. Back home, I laid the folder on the dining table and stared at it as if it might move. I picked up the bracelet and turned it in my fingers until the tiny clasp faced the lamp. That's when I noticed a hairline seam I hadn't put there. The clasp shifted, revealing a sliver of metal inside, not a stone setting, a cavity. There was a micro recorder tucked into the body of the clasp. Its tiny LED dead Morse, its tape spent. I felt the room tilt. The bracelet had been recording. How long? What had it heard? The diner. St. Luke's? The riverfront. Had Warren known? Had someone slipped it in before or after? Monica wouldn't know a micro recorder from a mood ring. Derek, maybe. Reed, easily. Or someone else. Someone who liked to keep insurance. I pried the battery out, slid the device free, and fed it fresh power from a drawer full of orphaned cables. The tiny thing warmed in my palm like a confession. In my office, I plugged it into my laptop. A simple directory popped up, 3 files, time-stamped across the last month. I put on headphones and pressed play. Voices, my voice, Monica's at the diner, brittle and hopeful. Derek's, crass and too fast. Warren by the river, colder than the water. Then another voice I didn't expect, the councilman's, low and righteous. You keep the titles until the audit is done, he said, the smugness crisp. If the boy gets curious, you bring him to me, not the police. I'll decide what gets forgiven. Warren's voice, cynical. He's a school teacher, not a problem. Everyone is a problem if they are patient enough, the councilman said. I paused the file. I let silence expand until it pressed my ears. The recorder had caught what mattered, the glue between money and muscle. the thing that would turn a story about a dead lender into a room full of indictments. I forwarded the file to Carla with one sentence. Use this to keep your job after you do the right thing. Then I sent a copy to Dorsey with a message that would get him out of bed. The councilman is on tape instructing retention of titles and obstruction. He's your link between Warren and the shell. If you move tonight, you'll catch him before he edits his conscience. My phone rang almost immediately. Dorsey this time. No preamble. Where did you get this? From a bracelet I should have stopped believing in years ago, I said. It was sewn into the clasp. I don't know who planted it. I suspect Reed or someone trying to keep Warren loyal. You're handing me a career case, he said, and there was something like gratitude in it. Stay put. We're coming for the folder. I laughed softly. Detective, I've been staying put my whole life. This time I'll deliver. I grabbed my coat, the folder under my arm, the bracelet recorder in my pocket. As I reached for the door, my phone buzzed again. Carla, tell me you're not joking, she said, breathless. This audio, be careful, I said. Print it right. Verify the timestamps. Don't become the story when you could be the beginning of its end. I'll do both, she said. I'm good at walking and chewing. I'll believe it when I see it, I said, and hung up. Snow thickened. The streets were quieter than sermons. I drove toward the precinct, but at the corner by the hardware store, a black SUV slid in behind me. Too close. In the rear view, the driver wore a knit cap, face shadowed, posture familiar like a bad dream. Reed. At the next light, he bumped my bumper, just enough to jar the folder on the passenger seat, not enough to give me the relief of an excuse to stop. I turned right where the sign said no turn on red and prayed the camera was working. He followed. My father's watch ticked loud enough to be ridiculous. I made a decision then, not elegant, not clean, but mine. Instead of heading to the precinct, I turned into the big box grocery lot on Gratiot, the one that stays lit like a football field and keeps cameras like a nervous billionaire. I parked under a lamp and got out with the folder in my hand, heart doing a drumline show in my ribs. Reed pulled in 2 rows over and started toward me, coat open, hands visible. The snow softened his outline, but it didn't do the same for the knife I knew he kept in his right pocket. Don't be a spectacle, Mr. Bennett, he called softly. Give me the paper and go home. Come take it, I said, raising my voice. Right here, where Mrs. Delaney from the PTA can film you from the produce aisle and give it to her niece with 500,000 TikTok followers. He stopped, his eyes cut left to right, locating cameras like a professional. The lot was empty, but for an old man pushing a cart and a teenager smoking in that way teens do, when they hope someone will tell them not to. He smiled, small and poisonous. You really won't quit. I did quit, I said, and felt a strange calm lay itself over me like a coat. I quit every version of me that made you think I wouldn't fight back. He took a step forward. I took one back, lifted the folder high, and shouted in my best teacher voice, the one that could stop a cafeteria riot. Help! This man is trying to take evidence related to a murder. The old man looked up. The teenager lifted his phone. Across the lot, a security guard emerged from the sliding doors like a boulder learning to walk. Sirens were somewhere not yet here, but on their way. Reed's face didn't change, but his options did. He made a choice. He turned fast and jogged back to the SUV. The tires spat slush as he left, and the relief that rolled through me was cheap and bright. I exhaled into the snow and tasted metal and relief and something like grief. Not for him, for all the men I'd ever met who mistook silence for virtue and noise for sin. When the patrol car pulled up, I held the folder like a sacred object. Mr. Bennett, the officer said, already knowing. Detective Dorsey asked us to escort you. Good, I said. I'm done driving in circles. At the precinct, Dorsey met me at the door. I handed him the folder. He flipped it open, gave a low whistle almost reverent, then nodded to an officer who whisked it away like it might melt. We picked up the councilman, he said, not hiding the satisfaction. He was leaving his office with a backpack and a look that said, my calendar just cleared. We'll see what he sings. He'll sing everything, then try to pitch a solo, I said. Don't let him. Dorsey looked at me for a long moment. You know, most people don't get to see a story like this from the inside and keep their soul. I tried to outsource my soul, I said. Turns out they don't take returns. On the way out, my phone buzzed one last time. A text from an unknown number, the tone almost rueful. You win today. Check your porch. Against better judgment, I drove home before the station could remember to ask me to stay. Snow had gathered on my steps in a neat white sheet. On the porch, a small cardboard box sat like a polite threat. No postage. I carried it in and set it on the table. My father's watch ticked once, twice, as if bracing. Inside was a single item, the black SUV's key fob. Attached was a supermarket loyalty tag. On the tag, a note in block letters. I'm tied to people you can't see. This ends when you say so. It wasn't a surrender. It was an invitation to stop, or a promise that stopping would cost less. I held the fob in my palm, the weight of it disappointing. Power always weighs less than you think. Then I did what I had not done in a year. I stepped to the window, looked at the reflection of a man who had finally run out of patience for unfinished business, and dialed the number that would decide the rest of the story. Looking back now, it was the exact second when Mercy curled its fist and asked to be counted. I didn't open the door right away. I stood there with the key fob in my palm, and listened to the clock mark out the seconds like a teacher taking attendance. Reed's note was blunt, a man's version of etiquette, an offer to end a war at the price of silence. Mercy, shrink-wrapped. I dialed the number I'd been avoiding. Dorsey's cell. "You've got my attention," he said. "I have Reed's SUV key. He left it on my porch with a message. He wants me to say this ends. You think it does if you say so." His voice stayed flat, but the hum of movement behind him told me he was already walking. "No," I said, "but it ends differently if I choose now." He didn't breathe into the line for a moment. "You meeting him?" "Yes, at the same parking lot on Gratiot. 20 minutes. He'll come. He's addicted to solutions that look like courage." "We'll be there," he said. "Out of sight. Don't improvise." "Detective," I said. "My whole life has been an improvisation that tried to sound like sheet music." When I hung up, I put the fob in my pocket and took one last look at the house. The neat stack of mail by the door, the coffee mug with a ring like a solar eclipse at the bottom, the church program on the console table from a Sunday service where I hadn't sung on key but sang anyway. Ordinary things, suddenly lit with meaning because I might not see them again before they turned back into objects. The parking lot lights threw their unreliable halos across the snow. I parked under the camera, this time by choice, and waited with the engine off. Breath ghosted the windshield. The watch ticked. The skin at the back of my neck did that old animal thing it does when it knows a story's last act is walking up the aisle. Reed arrived on foot, which I didn't expect, hands in his coat pockets, shoulders relaxed as if none of this could possibly be his problem. He stopped 10 feet away, enough distance to feel respectful or dangerous depending on your mood. "You have it?" he asked. "I do," I said. I took the fob out and held it up. "But you didn't come for a key. You came to see if I'd keep being the man who believes in neat endings. What do you believe in now?" "Receipts," I said, "and exits that don't require eulogies." His laugh was small. "You're tired. I'm finished," I said. "Different animal." I tossed the fob. He caught it one-handed, fluid, the way he probably caught every bad idea in his life. He glanced down at it, then up at me. "What's the price?" he asked. Silent type like you always has a price. "You leave," I said. "Tonight. You never call, never show, never circle back to test whether my memory is soft. You survive by disappearing, not by sharpening the knife. No more work for men who put their names on scholarships and their teeth in necks." He rolled the fob in his palm. "You going to trust me? I'm going to bury you under witnesses," I said. "There are more cameras here than pigeons. You're going to nod, turn and walk away. You do anything else, and the men in the unmarked cars behind those garden center pallets come introduce themselves." He didn't look back, but I saw the shift in his stance, the knowledge clicking into place. "You wired up the parking lot like a Christmas tree," he said, almost admiring, "and called your cop." "I called a man who still believes in paperwork," I said, "and I asked him to wait before he arrested the only person left who knows where the money goes when the lights turn off." "Why wait?" he said. "Because I need you to tell me something first." His eyes narrowed. "Who put the recorder in the bracelet?" I asked. "Warren or the councilman?" He surprised me. He told the truth. "Neither." "Derek." "Derek?" The word left my mouth like something sour. "He didn't trust anybody," Reed said. "Not you, not her, not me. He thought if he recorded enough, someone would owe him. Warren told him once that insurance is smarter than loyalty. He took it to heart." I stood very still while a new shame mapped itself across the old ones. "He gave it to Warren. He sold it the day he signed the first papers," Reed said. "He was scared. Scared men make good businessmen for a minute. Then they make widows." "Is he the one who called the police the night he was attacked?" Reed shrugged. "You tell me. He lives on the edge of a plan, that one." A car turned in off Gratiot, headlights sweeping us like a slow searchlight. Reed slipped the fob into his coat. "I walk now," he said. "I don't come back." "Walk," I said, "and keep walking." He did something that I didn't expect. He held my gaze for a breath, and the hard line of his mouth softened into something like respect. "You were a good teacher," he said. "You still are. You just had the wrong class." He turned, hands visible, and moved into the dark part of the lot where the snow fell thicker, his outline dissolving until it belonged to the weather more than to a man. Out near the road, an unmarked car idled and then rolled. Dorsey kept his promise. No theater, just gravity. I sat for a full minute, hands on the wheel, letting my pulse come down to something that could pass for human. When the cruiser lights flashed once, just once, like a nod, I started the engine and drove home. The living room clock met me with its small, responsible music, as if to say, "That will do." In the morning, the city woke to a clean layer of snow and a dirty layer of news. Carla's piece landed at 8:03 a.m., audio clips scrubbed and verified. The councilman's voice lined up against public statements with the precision of a choir rehearsal. The words that undid him weren't even the dramatic ones. It was the bland sentences, the bureaucratic confidence of a man who believed he was the room, not merely in it. Dorsey called at 9. They'd made the arrest before sunrise. Surrenders are always most cooperative before coffee. I visited Derek at the hospital a final time. He looked smaller in the bed, the way boys do when playtime ends and consequences introduce themselves. He tried on a smile like an old suit. "You hear about the councilman?" he asked. "Big man falls hard. Gravity's undefeated," I said, taking the chair. I spoke to Reed. He shifted, a quick movement that betrayed something he couldn't swallow. You did? He told me you planted a recorder in Monica's bracelet. His eyes slid to the window and back. I needed insurance. You needed a father, I said, but you settled for leverage. He bristled. You don't get to. I get to tell the truth, I said. You played every angle until the angles played you. That recorder put Monica at risk and kept Warren fed. I was trying to protect us, he said, and the last word felt strange and greedy in his mouth. Protection without honesty is just a quieter kind of violence. He looked at his hands, the bruised knuckles, the thin scrim of tape over the IV. What happens to me? He asked, and for the first time there was no pose in it. Just a question from a boy who finally realized nobody was going to carry him across the river. You'll testify, I said. You'll give the ledger and your memory and your shame. You'll keep your shop because too many fools rely on you, and because good people can still be useful. You'll pay back what you owe under the kind of supervision that makes pride itch, and you'll tell the truth to Monica. In a room with a counselor who's earned her gray hair, he tried to laugh, but it came out crooked. You really the king of mercy, huh? No, I said. I'm the custodian of endings. It's a less glamorous job, but it pays in sleep. On my way out, I stopped at the nurse's station and paid for a week of the small comforts insurance never considers. The channel upgrade for the TV, the decent coffee from the kiosk downstairs, a pair of thick socks. Mercy can be granular. Sometimes it's just paying for ESPN. That afternoon, Monica called. They asked me to come to the DA's office. I'm scared. Good, I said softly. Fear makes the truth careful. Will I go to prison? I don't think so, I said. You'll go to the past, for a while, but you'll come back. She was quiet, then said, I found a church 8 blocks from my condo. They have this Wednesday night thing where people tell the truth badly and everyone claps anyway. A testimony service, I said. Mostly the clapping is gratitude for surviving the sentences. I'm going tonight. Wear the bracelet, I said. Without the recorder, it's just a circle, a promise to yourself. She drew a breath that sounded like mending. Charles, there's no version of this where I deserve you. Deserve is a hungry word, I said. Eat something else. By evening, the cold had sharpened, the kind that makes streetlights look taller. I cleaned the kitchen like a man expecting company, which I was, Marcus and the woman he loved. I seasoned the chicken with thyme and lemon and more salt than my doctor would prefer, set it in the oven, and let the house fill with a smell my mother would have recognized and forgiven anything for. I set the good plates out, the ones we'd bought at the outlet in Ohio when we were still joking our way through road trips. I didn't hide them. History has earned a seat at my table. Marcus arrived with a woman whose eyes were both kind and unafraid. Leah, a hospice nurse who carried stillness like a skill on her resume. They brought a pecan pie that looked like a good decision. We ate, and we talked, and occasionally we didn't, which is its own kind of intimacy. At the second helping, Marcus asked the question he'd been waiting to ask. You and Mom, are you okay? We are true, I said. Okay comes and goes. Leah squeezed his hand. True is better for long drives. We moved to the living room with coffee that did not taste like consequence this time, and sat with the kind of quiet only family can make without trying. He told me about a promotion he might take, and the confusion of wanting more and wanting peace in the same hour. I told him about a student I'd run into at the market, now a mother, who said my class was where she learned that history isn't dates. It's the first time you tell the truth about what you did and why you did it. When they left, the house felt empty in a way that didn't accuse me, just roomy. I washed the dishes by hand, drying each plate like it mattered, which it did. There was a knock while I was putting away the last glass. Not Dorsey, Monica. She stood on the porch with a small tin in her hand, the kind that once held Christmas cookies and now held apologies. For you, she said. What is it? I asked. Letters, she said. Ones I never sent, from the year after I left. I don't expect you to read them. I will, I said, and meant it. She looked at me with eyes that had learned something the hard way. I'm selling the condo, she said. I'm moving into a smaller place near the river. It's not the part with secrets, the part with fishermen and too many gulls. I want to hear water when I sleep. You'll hear it either way, I said. Better to choose which kind. She nodded. Goodbye, Charles. Good night, Monica. When the door closed, the house settled around me like a coat I'd grown into. I sat at the table with the tin and the watch and the quiet, and I opened a letter at random. The first sentence was clumsy and honest. I smiled. People think closure is a finish line. It's not. It's a room you repaint and live in, a drawer you finally empty, a bracelet you wear because it's just jewelry now, and not a microphone waiting to bite. Near midnight, Dorsey texted. Councilman rolled. Reed is gone. Your name is a footnote. Rest. I set the phone down and turned the watch's crown with my thumb, the tick steady, almost amused. I thought about Reed, walking through a bus station somewhere, his face turned toward a town with a short memory. I thought about Warren, whose charity gala bidders would spend a year learning how to turn shame into a different donation. I thought about Derek, who might finally learn that repentance is cheaper than plans. I thought about Monica at her Wednesday night meeting, clapping badly and grateful to be clapped for. I walked to the porch and stood there, breathing the kind of cold that scrubs a man. Down the block, a neighbor's wind chimes did their aimless work. Somewhere a dog barked with purpose and gave up halfway through. In the distance, bells from St. Luke's marked the hour, the sound folding over the snow and landing on my steps like a blessing that didn't ask whether I deserved it. Here's the part I didn't expect. Revenge never tasted like triumph. It tasted like clarity, like water after you've been trying to drink smoke. Justice did what it came to do, and what remained needed something else. Mercy's unglamorous broom, sympathy's old sponge. You can't rebuild a life with matches. You need a hammer and a willingness to hear it. That's my story. Not a neat bow, but a tied knot, tight enough to hold, loose enough to adjust when the weather changes. If you're still with me at this hour, pull up your own chair to the comments. Tell me what mercy looks like where you live. Tell me the city and state where you learned the difference between forgiving and forgetting, and how old you were when you realized they're not twins. And if stories like this help you breathe a little deeper, subscribe so you don't miss the next turn. We'll keep walking these roads together, one honest mile at a time.